Hello and welcome to the video. So here's what we've got coming up on this episode. We have this fantastic looking Hornby Railways model A4 Dominion of Canada and it's number R144. I got this second hand, not exactly sure when it came out, but I'll add that onto the video so you can see. But the box is looking in pretty good condition overall, considering its age. It's got some wear here, as you can see on the corners, but it's not too bad at all, and the cellophane window is still intact. You can see the model inside, it's looking pretty good. I can't wait to have a more detailed look at this model. So let's get it out of the packaging. So we seem to have this standard Hornby fireman and driver models here, which are still in the original packaging, they've never been fitted. And this model also comes with these instructions which tell you how to look after this model, and it has a great picture here of another A4 class. This is Sir Ralph Wedgwood, so it's not this model but it's very similar. And these instructions are very comprehensive, as you can see here. So the model is in this plastic sleeve and it comes apart quite easily. This is really neat packaging from Hornby. It lets you get to the model quite easily but keeps it secure. So I'm just going to lift that out of the plastic sleeve. So here we have the model out of the packaging and it immediately looks really good. I noticed when I was taking it out that it is tender driven, so it'll have a Ringfield motor in the back and the front part is probably just for pickup. So let's have a look at this in more detail, and we'll start off with a locomotive. This has got a lot of detail on it and a really nice paint job. This colour of green is really suited to this model. You can see starting at the front here, it's got the nice profile of this locomotive. It has some details here including rivets on this panel as well as the number here, and it's got this whistle added on as an extra part up here beside the chimney, so it looks like it's made of metal. The front wheels here have a lot of movement on them to help us get round the corner. You can see that it has the standard massive big Hornby coupling on the front here, and it doesn't look as though you can take this off the truck, which is really a shame. It kind of spoils the front looks of this locomotive, and I'm not sure you'd really want to be running this backwards pulling wagons or coaches, so I think it was a bit of a poor decision to not be able to remove that. Looking down the side of the locomotive, it has this additional metal rail here, name of the locomotive here, the Dominion of Canada, as a little nameplate. And that is really well done. I think that's actually an added on part as well. And you can see that it's got some really good detail here on these little hatches, and obviously the ribs going around the locomotive are very well picked out in red. The paintwork isn't brilliant on these. There's also a fine line going around here between the black and the green, and that's been painted on very well as well. It's got really nice valve gear here, these big large wheels which are very impressive, and it's very smooth in its operation. It's not powered obviously, so you can move these around quite easily, and you can see things like the brake blocks are in line with the wheels as well. That's a really nice touch. There's also some details of springs underneath, but not much else. You can see the Hornby logo there. It's upside down here, but it is there, and it says made in Great Britain. So this has been made before they outsourced all that to China. At the end here, the cab detail has these railings moulded into the plastic, but they've been picked out in silver, which is a nice little touch. And the windows have these surrounds with more detail of rivets, which is also very nice. The number there, 60010, is very crisp, and it has this transfer of extra red lines around it. You can see maybe this is because of the age of this locomotive now, but the transfer has a darker red than the bands on the boiler, so that's maybe something that Hornby didn't get right from the factory, or else it's just aged over time. But you can see this nice gold plaque here added on as well. I think that's just been painted onto the plastic of the moulding. The truck at the back here is made of metal, it's quite weighty as well, and it's got a single wheel in it, and it has this drawbar to the tender which has a bit of spring movement in it. I recently did a review of another Hornby locomotive, I'll put the link in the description, which had this as well, and the knock-on effect of this was that the tender moved independent of the locomotive, and that kind of spoiled the effect a little, but I can understand why they've done this. It helps the locomotive get round sharp corners. So here inside the cab you can see that pipework here has been picked out in gold, and that's a real nice touch. You can see a lot of detail, and there's also a brake wheel as well. You can see the glazing here. It's a one piece that comes all the way down the inside of the cab as well, so that's a bit of a shame that it does that. But but again, you might not see this when it's on the layout. So on the roof of the cab, you can see some additional detail, including rivets on these panels and parts which simulate that would be able to be opened, but they don't on this model. And again, you've got two extra little pieces of metal here, but there is a bit of overspill here on the paintwork. You can just see that the green is a bit faded at the middle there, and you can also see that there's this ridge running down the boiler, which I think is part of the moulding process. But I'm not quite sure what this is in the middle of the boiler here. This might be prototypical, so okay, fair enough, but to me it just looks like an ugly mould mark. So let's have a look at the tender. So this is quite heavy. It's obvious that the motor is in here. It looks very similar to other tenders that I've seen with this drive on it. These two axles here are driven. This one in the middle is not, and it has this extra wheel in the back which also isn't powered either and is free to move around. It's obviously been done like this to help this get around corners. This wheel has a number of ridges on it. I'm not sure that's because of the previous owner having done something to this wheel, or maybe it came out the factory like that, but that is actually really quite poor. It doesn't seem to have that on any of the other wheels. So the motor's inside of this tender, and this part is actually fixed on pretty securely. The other one I was reviewing, this part was loose, so it's quite interesting to find that this one isn't. It has red lining here as a transfer, and it does have a little bit of problems here. It's not very crisp. It looks like there may be some manufacturing fault on the transfer, and again the colour is a bit off from the other banding on the locomotive. It has the British Railways logo in the middle here. That's quite a nice transfer. It's got some fine writing there as well, so they've done well with that part, the logo, but not so well with the lining. There's some good detail down here with the springs and the axle boxes which have been moulded onto this part, and there's also some rivet detail and extras here too, and that's really nice to see. At this part there is obviously a door and what looks like a shovel moulded into the plastic at the top here, and some details down here as well of the parts of the tender, and it looks quite convincing. Up top you've got a representation of coal. This one's actually not too bad, but you know, it's full up to the brim again. Always seems to be the way on model trains that they're always well full of coal. Here at the back you've got connection to the carriages and another couple of railings which have been picked out in white paint, and there's some representation of steps moulded in here, and this portal as well, which doesn't have anything on it, it's just a circle. And you have this red buffer beam here, so the red has been applied very well, and it is accompanied by these additional buffers which are in black, so that's quite nicely detailed. And again, the massive Hornby coupling here as well. So we've had a look around both models now, and they're looking really good. There's no damage that I've noticed at all, so let's see if we can see this running. We've got it here now on the test track. I'm just going to give it some power. Okay, it needed a little push to get going, but once it did, it was running very smoothly. So let's see how much this weighs. So altogether, this weighs 418 grams. So overall, this model from Hornby, the Dominion of Canada, is a very impressive model. It's modelled on a locomotive which is similarly impressive, so I don't think they could have gone wrong in modelling this one, and its looks really shine through. It's quite an impressive thing, especially in this green colour. There are some limitations. Obviously the banding around the boiler is not picked out that well on the paintwork, and I can see that there's been some compromises when they designed this model. One of the downsides, I think, is the massive coupling at the front. The fact that you can't remove that and change it to some maybe pipework or a dummy coupling is quite bad, but aside from that, it works very well. The valve gear on the side turns extremely well, the pickups seem to all work great, and the motor still runs very strongly even though this is an older model. I did notice that the drawbar between the locomotive and the tender, it didn't have any significant movement when I was testing it, which is very unlike the other locomotive that I tested, so perhaps the other one had some problems with it, or the spring wasn't strong enough, but this one certainly doesn't seem to suffer from that problem. So would I recommend this locomotive? I think you could probably pick this up fairly cheap now. There are newer types of this A4 class that Hornby have produced with new tooling which really are very impressive. This one is more of a kind of budget model, but it's still very impressive and it would look great on your model railway layout. So I'll put this on the turntable so you can see all the way around. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. It really helps my channel grow. You can subscribe to enjoy more videos like this. But that's it for today. See you next time.